What's up you guys, welcome back and welcome if you're new. In today's video we're going to finally be installing a switch panel onto my Tacoma. As you guys already know, I do have a bunch of light bars and stuff like that onto my truck. So inside the cab, I'll show you guys in a minute, inside the cab it looks really ugly with just a bunch of buttons everywhere. So today we're going to be fixing that, and good thing for my good friend Ramon, because he's going to be the one that's installing it. Let's get to it.
Alright, good morning guys. Today we're going to be installing the Auxbeam switch panel. Instead of having rocker switches like everybody else has and looking kind of basic, Auxbeam and some other companies started releasing these guys. You have your main keyboard here that will hook up to your fuses here. Instead of having a rocker panel and switch fuses and relays and all that stuff, this takes care of that job. So for your average person that doesn't really know anything electrical wise, this might take you maybe a couple hours depending. It's super basic, it's just gonna take some time. The hardest part about this will be installing this guy in a safe location since it's not waterproof. This switch panel still has to see your accessory power. So it's not like some other ones where you can just have it with the car off and press lights and have them on. This is a little safer so you don't kill your battery. You have to be aware that your ignition is on in order to run these lights.
Oh yeah, one thing I did want to note, the cool thing about these, it does come with like different stuff. So depending of course like what you have floodlights, or for rear lockers, front lockers, for your whip light or anything like that, you can kind of just stick them on to the actual panel. So let's go ahead and get to it. We're gonna go ahead and clean up the mess. So we're gonna be removing all the positives from the battery, and then we're gonna be removing the negatives that I have grounded off over here. Once we clean that up, then we could go ahead and finally start installing the actual box here to put everything together. Gotcha! No, just kidding.
Alrighty, so the first step in this was removing all of these fuses and labeling them. So our next step is going to be mounting this guy up right here on top of the relay and the fuse panel. It's as high as we can go. So
now that we have kind of the wiring cleaned up and we know which ones we're going to actually be installing onto the box, which are right here and they're labeled, up next we're going to be pulling out one of these fuses, which I'll show you guys, but we're going to be using this add a fuse here to go ahead and just tap into it.
For our lovely switch panel that we have over here, again, as a safety measure, you have to have the key on. So there's a couple ways you could go about this. You could run this into the cab, do it off your ignition switch, your push to start, or any other way you like it. Or in this case, for ease of installation, we are going to go off our fuse box, off one of the fuses that powers on as soon as the key is on. In this case, we're going to be tapping into our 30 amp fuse for our towing. For those of you guys that don't know how to read a diagram, I struggled with it too. When I started working on cars, I hated electrical, like with the passion. Try to match it up to what you're looking at exactly. Sometimes also overlaying it helps. We have our big 30 amp fuse, which is right here, PTC, don't know what that means. Toyota lingo. Then right underneath it, which would be right here, we have our 30 amp fuse for our towing tail lights. So that's the fuse that controls your trailer lights when you hook up a trailer. Or if your truck has a towing package option like his has, you will have this. So in this case, we pulled the 30 amp fuse right out of here. We're going to install this guy, reinstall our 30 amp fuse. Since it's getting power off of it, we are going to put another 30 amp fuse here in line to protect the rest of these fuses. After that, we are going to connect this guy to here, and we will have power for our switch assembly.
Damn.
Then before we proceed, we are going to need to verify that we have power. So
both fuses are on it. There's one up here and then one at the bottom that you can't really see. So of course they're both 30 amp fuses, just in case you guys are curious. Up next we have the fuse box cover right here. We're going to be mounting this bad boy right here. Before we do that though, we're going to start kind of just putting it together. We're going to install the negative and the positive. Just in case you guys are curious, it does actually say it on here. So this one is the positive, this one is the negative. And just in case you don't know what that is, you probably shouldn't mess with the car, but a negative would be the black one, and then the positive would be the red one. Let's do it.
So for installation's sake, we're just going to get these all nice and snug. So that way, in case once we install it, if we need to change the direction of the wire, we can. And then once we're fully done installing everything, we snug these guys down
all the way.
Don't forget that, because having them like this could also give you a really bad connection and start popping fuses.
And you do not want that. case you didn't see what he was doing, so he just kind of marked the holes where we're going to be drilling into this, just that way it stays mounted. And then we did drill, we're going to be drilling a small hole here. The reason why is we're going to be putting the ACC through there to go ahead and install it into the fuse box where we put the add a fuse. Just in case you guys are curious, the add a fuse, you could get it like at AutoZone, or you could get it on Amazon. They're super cheap. So up next, once we do that, then we'll go ahead and put some sealant as well, just so that way it's weather protected.
The reason for this hole again was to run the accessory for the switch, because you could run this into the cab, then somewhere else, but for ease of install, in this case, we're going to slide it through the hole, feed it through. After that, we're going to cut it to length to match the other end in the the switch fuse, whatever that thing's called.
Add a fuse?
Add a fuse. Is that really what it's called?
That's what it's called.
Into the add a fuse, and that'll give us our power.
And keep in mind, you guys, if you guys do it this way, please make sure to put some sealant, because if you guys do ever go off-road and go through some mud or anything like that, water's going to get in there and it's going to get damaged. So,
and then you're going to be stuck there.
No bueno.
No good. So remember, the relay and your fuse panel cover seals the system, but we're opening the system. And we're also installing this there just because, as you can see on the side, it's not waterproof. So this has to go either in the cab or in the highest point in your engine bay to avoid water at all costs. Even then, you might still get some water. So just be very wary of where you install this ahead of time.
Sketch. Hi. Just kidding.
So once you figured out how much slack you're going to have, in our case, we couldn't cut it down too much since this is still a serviceable cover and you need access to your fuses and relays. The last thing you want is to have like be super tight and then you can't, so keep in mind. So in this case, we have enough slack to where you can pull off the cover and let it rest on top of the engine to access its fuses. We're going to strip away some of the wire to gain access to it. Insert it into here, make sure it's all the way in. Last thing we want to do is crimp it, only to tug on it and then find out that you didn't crimp it. I'm waiting for the
action.
All right, our wiring gauges are different and the crimp that we had was for a bigger gauge wiring. So we got the proper gauge crimp for our smaller wiring. Now some people are going, hey wait, you just said they're different. They are. But the workaround for a bigger to smaller gauge crimp is you strip away enough wire to where it's completely in it. Then you crimp it down here, and for the added safety, you also get that guy crimped as well. But to add safety onto that, before we proceed, we're gonna get some heat shrink to cover it up.
Professional right here, look at.
Okay.
You guys wanna hire him? There he is.
So as you can see, we stripped away a decent amount. Before sliding on the heat shrink, we're gonna confirm that it'll cover it completely. And that's exactly what we need. This here we have ample wiring inside the crimp. If you only go a bit, you're gonna have not much room for it to bite on. So you wanna make sure it's all the way towards the middle before you crimp. Make sure we're in all the way, nice and tight. As you can see, pulling right where we want it, nice and snug. This up, heat it up to shrink it down. Just like the French toast I make in the mornings, burnt.
Nice and burnt, crispy.
What we're gonna do right now is we're gonna start running our ground and powers. So there's a couple ways you can go about installing your ground on this one. If you're doing this on the Tacoma, you're in a lucky position that you have a chassis ground here as well as a battery ground here. Around because again, it's a serviceable cover, so you want slack on your cables. So we're gonna loop around here onto our chassis ground. Our power wire, we're gonna circle around the fuse box, up and over onto our 13 here. One not cool thing about the Auxbeam thing is your power wire looks like your amp wiring.
Yep.
It works. So we're gonna do it this way. Have the short end here so we can secure the fuse onto the fuse box cover, and then we'll just wrap the power wire around on top of the 13. Again, for now, we're leaving everything loose so we can move things around if we need to before we secure everything down. So now that we have power, we have our ground, our next step is going to be hooking up the lights. And a neat thing about this, if you're a newcomer to wiring, as you can see, you have your minus and your positive. This is your power, this is your ground, and it's labeled all throughout on both sides to help you figure it out. And then on top of that, you have these nice inline micro fuses, your 5, 10, 20, and 30 amp fuses. So in our case, most of the fuses for these lights are 30 amp fuses. So we are going to be replacing these 3 fuses on both sides with 30 amp fuses, just to avoid overloading the circuit. Next step, which isn't the next step we said it was going to be. So before we go ahead and run the wires, we are going to pass this through. This is what connects this end to here, and we're going to feed it into the cab to our keyboard. Find your hole of choice on the firewall. In our case, Jesse was kind enough to already have that done. Because it takes forever. It really does. Everything's pretty straightforward except for that. You have your female and male end. Make sure they're in. You're going to have to go over this guy because this is also going to keep water out of here. Walk this guy over, screw it on into place. So, it's time you pass something through a grommet to make your life easier and you don't hate yourself for already making bad decisions in life. It's always best to slide something through. In this case, we have this random piece of plastic that I had in the garage. Secured it to the plastic, so 2 zip ties, that way it moves in, but this also doesn't move back. So our next step is we're just going to pass it through.
Once you do that, you want to go ahead and go inside the cab, and then you can go ahead and just kind of pull it through. So now that we've ran that wire through here, up next we're going to have to kind of just find a place to mount this. Where we're going to be mounting it is going to be right there. You could do 2 things: get some double-sided tape, or just be brave like me, right?
Yeah, he's braver than I am.
And just literally drill it in there. That's what we're going to be doing.
And then that's going to be an awkward visit to the dealership.
I think this whole truck is an awkward visit already.
It isn't though. You have these 2 screws that will line up with these holes at the same time. They also line up with these holes. Back it installed. Alright, so once you have your location set up like we do, our next step, and due to our space constraints, our next step is going to be assembling this in place first, and then we're going to re-secure it to our location. The top end right there. These guys in. Once we have it in place, fully assembled as you can see, now we're going to remount it. Obviously it's going to be a little tricky because of the angle that we're at. Now, once we have it in place, our next step is running the wiring. I'm not a fan of exposed wires, so we're going to run it through the A-pillar, down to the side of the dash. And we're just going to run this up, leaving some slack underneath the dash just in case the fuse cover has to come off. Always match up your grooves, get it in place, secure it. As you can see, we have power. So as you can see, we have it on and we have power. On, off, and so we might have made the slight mistake of tapping into a fuse that has battery power instead of accessory power. So we're gonna wire in the lights, figure that out. After that, if we have to, we just change fuse location. No big deal, it happens. But essentially that is the Auxbeam install.
Damn.
So, as you saw, even with the key off, we still had power because this guy is off the battery power. We checked our other fuses, and our only viable option that wasn't piggybacking off of anything major is going to be this 10 amp fuse that's off the lights. If we would have left it here, the key's off, as you can see, it's going to have power all the time, and that's going to drain your battery, which is what you want to avoid. So for now, we're going to piggyback off this 10, but because we're also adding power to it, we're going to change that 10 to about a 20 amp fuse. You usually want to keep it within like 10 degrees higher, 10 amps higher, never lower. 5 to 10 amps higher is the sweet spot. Anything over that, you're running the risk of burning wires, causing some severe damage. So we're going to change this 10 to a 20, and that will solve the issue of the Auxbeam being on all the time. So we're going to the 20. Next we're going to pull out that 10 amp fuse. Then we put this guy in place. Double check to make sure that we have the power.
For this next step, since I do have these ugly switches here, we're going to be pulling them out back into the engine bay. Once we do that, we're going to go ahead and just kind of locate the relays on these things, chop them off, and we're going to try to reuse the existing wire that is connected straight to all the lights, and then we'll go ahead and do the wiring into the actual box. Let's do that. See boy right here? Everyone hit him up.
Yeah, curtsy.
No, just kidding.
Next step for those of you that are not electronically inclined. So I'm going to do this the way like someone that doesn't know how relays work would do it. If that makes sense. I'm still half asleep, bear with me. So as you guys could see, we have wires, and your normal person's gonna be like, well, what the hell do these do? So we're gonna simplify for you guys. As you can see, these two are the ones that go to the battery. So these are gonna be the wires that apply our ground and our power. Then we have these guys over here. They go out to our switch. These are what tell the system to turn on and turn off. You can see we have our power. This is going to be our constant power. We have the power feeds for both sides, and over here we have the grounds for both sides. So we're going to start snipping away at the power and the ground feeds, and these, instead of going to the relay, are going to go directly to the Auxbeam power panel that we set up last time. Simple.
What do you mean last time? It's the same day.
Is it the same day?
I don't know. You guys figure it out.
The X-Files themes.
So just to shorten things down, so of course there's the harness. We just pulled out all the switches that were in here, of course. So let me go ahead and give you guys an example. So the switch was this one that was inside the cab. So that one we're going to be, of course, removing. We're going to be removing the relay, and we're also going to be removing the one that went to the battery. We're going to be cutting it probably about right here. We're not going to be taking out the whole wire that's connected to the actual lights of all of them, of course, because these wiring that's going to be left, we're going to connect it to the box. That's basically what he said, just in case you guys didn't get his, he's too smart.
I'm a little
I'm just kidding.
Now we're going to very controlled, or in a smarter manner, trying to figure this out the way you guys normally would. We're going to do away with our blue wires. We're going to do away with the red guys, but at the same time, in case he wants to get rid of the Auxbeam and go back to the relays, we're not going to be, you know,
breaking it,
cutting it right there, because obviously you can't reuse that ever again. So just enough slack to where in case he wants to do it once again, he is able to.
So this is all we have left. Just so you guys know, we're working on light by light, meaning this one goes to my lights that are up there. After we finish up wiring that one, then we'll go ahead and go with these, because if you guys do remember, we were saying on this bad boy here, it does come with fuses, but you want to put the actual fuse that is going to be needed per the light that is being installed. So for example, the lights up there need a 30 amp fuse, so we've already switched it out, which it has a 30 amp fuse there. Alright, so now that we have them spliced open, we kind of tested them out. They weren't for these ones, they were actually for my bed lights, but it's the same process. So now that we have them spliced open, we won't be using the blue ones. The reason why, because on my actual lights, these are the pros from Diode Dynamics. They have a backlight, and then they have the full illumination. So I'm not going to be using the backlight anymore. So these ones I could go ahead and either chop them off, or for us, we're going to just kind of tape them down. So basically, we're just going to be using the two reds on here and the two blacks, which is ground and power. So let's connect that now and get it done. Alright, just to update you guys, so now that we've tested each light and we kind of know what it is, we've of course marked it one more time just to be sure. So of course they're all marked, they're all cut up. Now we've switched out all the fuses to what we're going to need on each side. Up next, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be using some of these spades here, which you could get on Amazon. We'll make sure to link them in the description box below. And we're going to be using them to kind of put them on here, and that way it connects nice and clean into these connection terminals right here. So up close, just so you guys see what I'm talking about. So of course, this is one of the lights that we're going to be installing. We have them spliced out. These are going to be the spades here, which are going to go over one here, and then we'll go ahead and put one on the black one as well. But just to show you guys, so it's going to connect nice and clean into the terminal. What we're going to do is we're also going to put some heat shrink here just to kind of keep it weatherproof underneath, so it'll look really good once we're done. So once we connect everything, we'll go ahead and show you guys, and then we'll also turn them on just so you see everything works, and it'll be nice and clean.
To make your stuff look nice and pretty, don't forget to slide over the heat shrink before you go over. That way you don't just have this stuff there looking all basic. So since we have a lot more wire sheathing than actual wiring, we're going to strip away a little more to make this a little longer. We're going to fold the wiring over, so when we crimp this guy down, it has ample room to cover the wiring instead of the sheathing. I've seen it a couple times where people just strip away a little bit, slide it over and crimp it, but they have no power because They just crimped on the sheathing and not the actual wire. I'm gonna fold this over on itself to make it thicker than it is. That way when we slide this over, see here, it'll be tough to see. We have little wiring sticking out, and that's exactly what we want. Get this over. Solid.
Nice and clean, the way we like it.
Nice and clean, just minus that cut there. So we're gonna repeat the same process on these guys, since these wires are a lot, who knew the wires, a lot thinner than these guys. I only recommend you guys do the longer and
Fold over.
When your wiring is thinner. Obviously this is like a small 12 gauge and this is a bigger like 14 and 16 gauge wiring. So size does matter. Don't let them tell you otherwise. You can't carry a lot of power with small wires. Big wires. Go ahead and put them into place. Like so. Make sure you're all the way in.
Wow. Do you have trouble with that?
Sometimes. Depends on how drunk I am.
I think we all do.
Make sure it's secure. Wiggle them to make sure they don't move around because you don't want these loose and they'll short out and you want to pop fuses and stuff. Alright, we got these in place. Double check to make sure we got them in the right spot. Positive and negative. Red, black, golden. Now we're on to the next one, which is going to be your light bar.
Oh yeah, and we'll just repeat the process as well, putting the spades on, some heat shrink just to make it look nice and clean. So once we finish all these up, we'll go ahead and get back to you guys and show you guys the finished process. Make sure to stay tuned because we'll go ahead and show you that everything still works as well, just so you guys see that thing works. Update you guys, we're not done here yet. We've just kind of wired everything up. We're of course going to clean this up a little bit more. I just wanted to show you guys. So now it's going to look nice and clean, and of course once we took on all the wires, it'll look really good. Up next, what we're going to be doing is just kind of testing out the switches. So we're going to go ahead and grab this bad boy right here, which is the stickers that are going to go over that. And we're just going to go kind of just one by one, testing what's what, and then we'll go ahead and label it. So that's what we're going to do now. So now that we're all done, check this out, you guys. So installing what we just did, we got rid of this much wire that was on the truck. So right now I'm going to go ahead and flip the camera, show you guys in the engine bay, then I'll go ahead and show you guys the switch panel itself, and then we'll go ahead and test out the lights and show you guys that it works. Let's show you guys. The master at plan was right here. Yay! I was just kidding. So as you guys can tell, so everything looks nice and clean now. Of course, this one's a little bit on the bulky side, and this is too. But we're going to go ahead and get rid of this down the line and in the future and kind of switch this out to a different one. But we just want to show you guys how it looks. So if you guys do remember, there was a bunch of wiring everywhere. Now it looks nice and clean. Let's go ahead and show you guys in the inside. All right, so looking inside the truck right here, the reason I mounted it up here, as you can tell, it looks really clean. But the reason we had it mounted up here, because on the 2020 Tacomas, you're gonna have the traction control button right here. I know on the previous models, it doesn't have anything here, so you can remove the little cubby and install this switch here. So it'll look a lot cleaner. But as far as for me, I put it there. But for you guys can kind of put it anywhere you want. You could even put some Velcro in the back of it and probably stick it down there or wherever. It doesn't really matter. But there it is, you guys. Let me go ahead and show you guys that it works. So there's the backlight. I don't know if you guys can see it. So it is backlit for nighttime. And then you go ahead and just kind of hit everything. And there you go. So it works. Let me show you the lights. Damn!
Sheesh, as the kids go. Right?
Yeah. So there it is, you guys. Works. And then one thing that is actually pretty cool about this, what we did, since I did have the Raptor lights kind of connected to my headlights, we ended up putting it on one of the switches. So now I'm in full control of those, so I can turn them off if I want to or leave them on. But everything's done. Sexy. Thanks to him. Just kidding.
Don't use rocker switches and nasty cables. Keyboards are where it's at. It's 2021. Leave the switches in like the 1990s where they belong.
I agree. Hell yeah. The only thing, you do need some time, so make sure you plan out your day to just probably work on the truck, especially if you've never done anything like this. Make sure you save some time for that. Another thing I wanted to state is doing it this way, it's going to look a lot nicer in your engine bay. It's just going to look a lot cleaner, and even inside your cab, it'll look a lot better having the switches there. Another thing I did want to note, on this specific Auxbeam one, as much as I do like it, one thing I did want to note on here, so looking inside, I don't really like the design of this part. I'll be completely honest. Like we were saying in the beginning of the video, it's not 100% waterproof right here. That's why you have to kind of mount it a little bit higher. So that's probably the only downside, but overall for the price and everything, I think it's good. So if you guys do end up wanting to purchase it, it's going to be in the description box below, along with the other products that we used today. So if you guys liked today's video, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. See you guys.
JesseRizo is here for you. It's here for you. Like I said, it's super simple. Please feel free to subscribe.